There are moments in life when you will be overlooked, doubted, and underestimated. Not because you're not capable, but because the world has not yet seen the fire burning within you. And in those moments, my dear, you will have two choices: to shrink yourself to fit into their expectations, or to rise with quiet power and become so good that they simply cannot ignore you. There is a quiet but powerful truth that many people forget: you do not need permission to be who you are. You do not need validation to shine. In a world that constantly tells you to wait your turn, to stay small, to remain in the background until you're ready, I am here to remind you that your readiness is not something others decide. It lives within you. And your light, that undeniable brilliance of your soul, does not require applause to be real. From the moment we are born, society conditions us to seek approval, be it from parents, teachers, peers, or the world at large. We're taught to measure our worth by how others perceive us. Did they notice? Did they clap? Did they believe in us? And when they don't, when they stay silent, we begin to question our own brilliance. But here's the truth that changed everything for me. You don't need a spotlight to shine. Your light, your purpose, your gift, it is already alive inside of you. The world might not see it yet, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. Sometimes the most incredible souls are hidden in the quiet corners of life, doing extraordinary things away from the noise. They write books no one's reading yet. They build dreams that haven't been noticed. They heal, they give, they grow, not because someone is watching, but because it is who they are. And that, my dear, is real greatness. That is the kind of light that doesn't burn out when applause fades. That is the kind of purpose that can't be dimmed by rejection. You may feel invisible right now. You may be putting in the work, doing the inner transformation, showing up with integrity, and still feel like no one sees you. But let me ask you something: do you see you? Because the moment you begin to value your light, the world slowly learns to do the same. It all begins with you, your confidence, your quiet conviction, your belief that you are enough. Not someday, not if you achieve more, but right now. Don't shrink your light because others aren't ready for it. Don't dim your fire to make others comfortable. Don't silence your voice just because it hasn't gone viral. Greatness isn't about how many people are watching you. It's about how many moments you've dared to show up, even when no one clapped, even when they ignored you, even when the room went silent. Be that person, the one who shines not because she's seen, but because she's alive. The truth is, people are often slow to recognize authenticity, especially when they're used to imitation. But your light is not here to compete. It is here to complete something the world is missing. You don't owe them proof. You owe yourself truth. And the most powerful truth you can carry is this: you are worthy of taking up space even before they give you permission. You were not born to fit in. You were born to stand tall, to live boldly, and to glow even when no one's watching. And one day, when the world finally catches up to what you've always known, you won't need their validation. Because by then, your light will have already built a path not just for yourself, but for others still waiting to believe that they too can shine. So let them watch or let them stay blind. Either way, your light was never meant to ask, only to be. We live in a world where words are thrown like confetti. Loud opinions, promises, declarations of greatness. But none of them hold the same weight as mastery. You can speak endlessly about your dreams, your goals, your purpose, but if your actions don't align with that voice, the world eventually stops listening. There comes a time in life when you realize that saying you will rise is not the same as rising. Saying you are ready is not the same as being prepared. And that is where mastery enters. Because when you become excellent at something, when you invest in depth over noise, your work begins to speak louder than anything you could ever say. There was a time when I believed that I needed to convince the world of my worth. I thought if I spoke passionately enough, if I explained myself clearly enough, then maybe, just maybe, they would believe in me. But the truth is, no amount of explanation can replace execution, and no amount of noise can replace the quiet power of someone who has worked day and night to become undeniable. Mastery doesn't happen overnight. It is built in invisible hours. It grows in silence. It matures in solitude. You don't become exceptional by wishing, hoping, or waiting. You become exceptional by showing up again and again, even when you fail, even when no one notices, even when the results are delayed. That's when you're becoming someone the world cannot ignore. You don't need to tell them who you are when your work is already showing them. Be so devoted to your craft, your calling, your growth, that your presence speaks for itself. So many people are in love with the idea of success, but they aren't committed to the process of mastery. They want the reward without the repetition. But if you truly want to be respected, if you want to make an impact that outlasts you, then fall in love with the process. Fall in love with being a student. Fall in love with practicing when others are sleeping. Fall in love with learning when no one is watching, because that is where mastery is born. Not on stages, not on social media, but in the raw moments of quiet commitment. And here's the most powerful part. When you become great at something, the world eventually makes room for you. You don't have to beg to be seen. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to prove your value with empty words. Excellence is a language that everyone understands, even in silence. It draws people in, not because you asked them to look, but because they can't help but notice. Think about the people who've inspired you the most. Were they the loudest? Or were they the most consistent? The ones who kept showing up day after day, refining their gift until it became impossible to deny. That is your power. That is your path. You don't need to impress the world. You need to be so good at what you do, so deeply rooted in discipline and passion, that even if they don't say it, they feel it. So don't waste your energy trying to explain yourself to people who haven't earned the right to hear your story. Let your mastery do the speaking. Let your actions become your voice. Let your work carry your name farther than your words ever could. And when you finally arrive at the moment where the world recognizes your brilliance, you will know it was never about being loud. It was always about being ready. Because when you are truly excellent, when you've done the work, you don't need to announce it. Mastery will speak for you. There is a sacred power in silence, a quiet strength that most people overlook. In a world obsessed with broadcasting every move, there is something rare and beautiful about the soul who chooses to build in silence. While others are busy performing for attention, the one who grows quietly is the one who eventually creates something that cannot be ignored. And that is the lesson life has taught me again and again. You don't need to announce your every step, because when the foundation is strong, your success will echo louder than any words ever could. We live in a culture that constantly urges us to prove ourselves, to show progress, to tell the world what we're working on, even before it's ready. But rushing to be seen can destroy what needs time to be strengthened. When you build in silence, you are not hiding, you are preparing, you are nurturing something sacred. You are giving your vision the space to grow without judgment, without pressure, without outside noise. Not everything needs to be shared while it's still becoming. Some things are more powerful when revealed only after they're fully formed. There were times in my life when I felt the pressure to prove my progress, to show that I was healing, evolving, achieving, so that others would believe in me. But eventually I learned this powerful truth. The most beautiful transformations don't need an audience. You don't have to post your pain to prove you're rising. You don't have to broadcast your goals to make them real. Some of the most profound growth happens in the shadows, behind closed doors, when no one is watching, and that's exactly how it should be. Because when you're building something meaningful, what you need is focus, not followers. You need discipline, not distraction. And silence becomes your shield. It protects you from opinions that aren't meant for you, from energy that doesn't align with your vision, and from voices that would only plant doubt where you are trying to grow confidence. Let the others rush. Let them chase likes, applause, attention. Your path is different. You're not here to impress. You're here to build something that lasts. And anything built to last is built slowly, carefully, and quietly. Think of the roots of a tree. You don't see them growing, but without them, the tree would never stand. That's what silence gives you. It gives you roots. And then one day, after all those unseen hours, after all that private discipline, after all those nights no one knew you were working, you arrive. You emerge not to prove a point, but because you're ready. And your success, it speaks for itself. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to convince anyone. The results are undeniable. That's the kind of power silence gives you. The power of authenticity, depth, and unshakable self-trust. So don't worry if no one sees you yet. Don't panic if your efforts aren't being applauded. Some of the greatest stories begin in silence. Some of the strongest people rise quietly. And some of the most extraordinary lives are built away from the noise. Let them wonder. Let them underestimate. Let them question what you're doing. Because while they're watching others You are preparing. You are refining. You are becoming. And one day when your time comes, and you won't have to say a word. Your work, your character, your consistency, that will be the only noise they hear. Success doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being intentional. And when the silence ends, let it be, because your greatness has arrived, fully formed, deeply rooted, and impossible to ignore. Rejection, a word we fear, a feeling we try to avoid. Yet, rejection is not the end of your story. It's often the beginning of your becoming. So many people take rejection as proof that they are not good enough, not worthy, not ready. But I've come to understand that rejection is not a wall meant to keep you out. It is a mirror meant to show you where to rise, where to strengthen, and most importantly, where to believe in yourself even when no one else does. There were moments in my life when rejection felt like a deep wound. Whether it was opportunities I was denied, rooms I was not invited into, or people who walked away when I needed them most, I questioned my worth. I asked myself, why not me? But over time, I realized I was asking the wrong question. The question was never, why was I rejected? It was, what am I being redirected toward? And that shift changed everything. The truth is, rejection often comes right before redirection. It removes what is not meant for your growth. It pulls away what would have distracted you from your purpose. And yes, it hurts. But that pain can either be your anchor or your fuel. When you take the energy of that disappointment and pour it into becoming stronger, wiser, and more resilient, you transform rejection into the very thing that propels you forward. You must understand that no one gets to define your value. No one has the power to silence your voice unless you give it to them. So when life says no, don't let it break you. Let it build something in you that's unshakable. Because every no is a chance to sharpen your focus, deepen your drive, and commit to the path even more fiercely. People often ask, how do I keep going when I feel like the world keeps turning me away? And I always say, you keep going because you're not doing this for their approval. You're doing this because your purpose demands it. You keep going because you owe it to yourself, not to be accepted, but to become unstoppable. You don't need every door to open. You just need the right one. And when it does, you'll be ready, not because everything went perfectly, but because rejection forced you to grow. Let rejection teach you. Let it refine your character, not define your worth. Let it humble you enough to stay grounded, but fuel you enough to keep moving. There is something powerful about a person who has been told, you can't, and turns that into, watch me. Because that kind of person doesn't just survive. They rise, they inspire, they lead. So don't curse the rejection. Don't collapse under the disappointment. Stand up, take a breath, and say to yourself, this isn't the end, this is fuel. Fuel for your fire, fuel for your vision, fuel to prove that your story doesn't stop at no. It evolves. Every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary has faced rejection. It's part of the path. It's not your enemy, it's your teacher. And the sooner you embrace that, the sooner you'll realize you don't need acceptance from the world to fulfill your destiny. You just need the courage to keep showing up, even after the world turns you away. Let your rejection become your resurrection. Let the no's echo as reminders that you're getting closer to a yes. That's worth every moment of waiting. Because in the end, you won't just rise in spite of rejection. You'll rise because of it. There is something profoundly freeing about living a life that doesn't beg for applause. A life where you no longer wake up trying to fit into expectations, but instead rise each day committed to expressing your truth, your heart, and your purpose. Most people spend their entire lives trying to impress the world, perfecting their image, adjusting their voice, editing their soul, just to be accepted. But there comes a time when you realize you were not created to perform. You were created to express. And when you begin to live from that place, everything changes. Impressing others is a moving target. What they admire today, they may ignore tomorrow. What they celebrate in you this moment, they may criticize the next. But expressing yourself truly and unapologetically is where real power begins. It's where peace is found. Because expression is not dependent on reaction. It doesn't need approval. It's not shaped by opinion. It's born from within. I've learned that when you live to impress, you hand over your identity to strangers. You let them decide who you should be, how you should speak, what dreams are acceptable, and which parts of yourself you must hide to fit in. But that kind of life is exhausting. And more importantly, it's not yours. When you finally choose to live to express, when you speak even when your voice shakes, when you show up as you are, without filters, you begin to feel something rare alignment. You start living in harmony with who you truly are. We must stop measuring our value by applause. Stop changing our path to match the crowd. The truth is, people will misunderstand you. They will judge you. They will criticize what they don't understand. But do it anyway. Express your soul anyway. Because the world doesn't need another imitation. It needs your authenticity, your voice, your vision, your story. And those things don't need to be perfect to be powerful. Some of the most impactful people I've met were not the most impressive by society's standards. They didn't have the loudest voices or the biggest platforms, but they were real, they were true. They had depth, they had scars, and they spoke from a place of wholeness that could only come from living honestly, not impressively. Here's something I've learned through experience. When you live to express, your life becomes a gift. Not a performance, not a competition, but a contribution. You begin to touch people in ways applause never could. You begin to lead without trying, inspire without shouting, and create impact that echoes long after you've left the room. Because people may forget what you showed them, but they will never forget how your truth made them feel. Let go of the pressure to look successful. Let go of the obsession with being admired. Instead, ask yourself, what is it that I need to say? What is it that I carry that could help someone else? What parts of me am I hiding just to be accepted? And then have the courage to bring all of it forward. Not because the world is watching, but because your soul needs to be heard. You don't need to be everyone's favorite. You don't need to go viral. You don't need to impress anyone to be worthy. You just need to be you, in full color, in full truth, in full grace. That is more than enough. And ironically, when you stop trying to impress the world and start expressing your heart, that's when people are truly moved. So live to express. Because your truth, in its raw and beautiful form, is what the world has been waiting for, even if it doesn't know it yet. There is a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It shows up day after day, quietly, patiently, powerfully. That strength is called consistency. And when you have it, when you show up, even on the days you feel invisible, even when the results seem distant, you begin to build something that even doubt cannot deny. The truth is, talent can spark a beginning, passion can create momentum, but it is consistency that carries you across the finish line. You don't need to be the most gifted. You don't need to be the loudest, the fastest, or even the most confident. You just need to keep showing up. That is the secret so many overlook. Because consistency doesn't look glamorous. It isn't praised loudly, but it is the foundation beneath every dream that has ever come true. It is the thread that connects intention to achievement. And the longer you hold that thread, the more unbreakable you become. People will question your journey. Doubt will whisper that it's not working. You'll face days when your mind says, "What's the point? What's the point?" And that is when your consistency becomes your voice. That is when you get up, not because it's easy, but because you've made a decision to be faithful to your path. There is something so powerful about being the person who doesn't quit, not because success came overnight, but because quitting was never an option. I remember times when I doubted myself deeply, when progress was invisible, when doors stayed closed, when I felt like no one was listening. But I kept showing up, not perfectly, not loudly, just faithfully. And something beautiful happened over time. The doubt grew tired. It lost its grip. It realized that no matter how loudly it spoke, I was still moving, still growing, still believing. That is the power of consistency. You become so rooted in purpose that the fear, the criticism, the uncertainty, they all begin to fade. Not because they stop appearing, but because they can no longer move you. When you've built a routine out of resilience, you no longer need motivation to keep going. You've turned discipline into your home, and that kind of strength can't be shaken. So many people wait for the perfect moment to start. But the truth is, perfection is a lie. The only thing that's real is your willingness to begin and your commitment to keep going. No matter how slow, no matter how messy, no matter how unnoticed. Because success doesn't come to those who start fast. It comes to those who never stop. Let others get discouraged by delays. Let others abandon their dreams when they don't see immediate results. But you be different. Be the one who keeps going long after the applause fades. Be the one who still believes when no one else does. Be the one who works in silence, trusts the process, and shows up again tomorrow. And one day, you will look back and realize it wasn't one big moment that changed everything. It was 1,000 small steps, quiet efforts, invisible victories, private battles that no one ever saw. But you kept going, and that consistency, it built you into someone unstoppable. You want to silence doubt. Don't argue with it. Don't negotiate. Just outlast it. Show it again and again that you are still here, still rising, still working. Because when you become so consistent that even doubt grows tired of testing you, you become truly unshakable.